Text with a very short purport, but it's still a very, very crucial and essential, and very famous verse for those who study the Bhagavad Gita. First we can recite Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 chapter 2, it's text number 44. And here Sanskrit goes, Bogaisvaya prasaktanam tayaparijate hasam yavasayatmikha buddhi samadhavna vidiyate. Translation, it's Lord Krishna speaking to Arjuna. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Samadhi means fixed mind. The Vedic dictionary, the Nirukti, says, Samyak idiyatesmin atmatabhayatatmyam. When the mind is fixed for understanding the self, it is said to be in samadhi. Samadhi is never possible for persons interested in material sense enjoyment, nor for those who are bewildered by such temporary things. They are more or less condemned by the process of material energy. In the purport. I'll read the verse again. Bogaisvaya prasaktanam tayaparijate tasam yavasayatmikha buddhi samadhavna vidiyate. In the minds of those who are attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So, Bhagavad Gita, of course, is an amazing spiritual book, but the whole thrust is devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It's a book about perfection of life, how to actually become truly happy in all respects, actually eternally happy. And it's a book that can give one all perfection of life that one could imagine, and also what one cannot imagine. It actually has, it completes actually the deep, very profound science of self-realization and how to actually reach the highest perfection that is possible for a human being. And the whole thrust is centered around that actually we can become happy through devotional service to the Supreme Lord. This is the whole theme of the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, there is, of course, Krishna is speaking, and there is Arjuna who's listening and asking questions to Krishna. Who's bewildered? What should he do? It's a book about confusion, and maybe that's why it's so relevant, because I think we all happen to be confused, sometimes at least, what to do with our life, what should we do and what should we not do. And I cannot see, if I do this, I don't see anything good coming out of that. If I do the opposite, I don't see anything good coming out of that. And if I don't do anything, I don't see anything good coming out of that. That's Arjuna's situation. And so then Krishna is instructing him, and he's teaching him the art of devotional service. He's telling Arjuna that actually you will always serve, and you will always be active. And that you cannot give up. That's not possible. You cannot give up being active. You'll always be serving someone. And now you are a soldier. It's a book to a soldier. Arjuna is a great soldier. And Krishna is telling him not to give up being a soldier. You change your whole consciousness. You, instead of acting for your own benefit and your own satisfaction, then you simply start acting for me, and I'm the Supreme Lord. This is also what Bhagavad Gita is about. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, God himself is actually speaking to his great devotee. And he's telling him, just change, instead of being self-centered and just acting for your own satisfaction, always considering what will be in it for me, and how can I gain, and will be lost, and I don't see any benefit of me losing my profits. All these kind of calculations. Instead of thinking like that, which is actually, that thinking is the very cause of our misery. and cause of our being bound in this world, actually bound to repeated birth and death in this world. This is why we are taking birth and dying, and taking birth and dying again and again, all species of life. And so instead of always thinking in terms of what's in it for me, in terms of like profit calculation for oneself, Krishna tells Arjuna, you simply start acting for my satisfaction. You serve as you're supposed to serve in any case, but now you do it for my satisfaction. And that will change the whole thing. And that will actually bring you this constant meditation on how I can render service to Krishna, the Supreme Lord, will bring you to actual samadhi. Prabhupada's, the verse here talks about samadhi or samadhau. It's another form of the word samadhi, which means controlled mind. The mind is completely fixed on one point naturally. This is actually samadhi, and generally we know the word samadhi from the yoga system. Yogis withdraw to the Himalayas or the jungles or some secluded place by a sacred river, and there they engage in meditation. And when they reach perfection, then they become absorbed in samadhi. That's generally where the word is known from. And of course, we think as practical people, most of us, when we hear that, it's nice, but not for me, impractical. How can I withdraw, give up my responsibility, give up my family, give up my comforts, and go to a mountain, jungle, secluded place, and simply, year after year, constantly simply be absorbed in meditation, sitting in one place, tolerating all kinds of extreme conditions, winter, summer, just like now in India. Is it still warm there? Or did it start raining? Still warm. So that's, what an austerity, 45, 50 degrees. Yogis, they go out in this heat, and then they surround themselves by fires on all sides and sit in the middle of the sun, and they tolerate and meditate. Everyone goes, most people in India, they go to air-conditioned rooms, but not the yogis. And in the winter, it's the other extreme. It can be freezing cold. Yogis, they go and then they submerge themselves in freezing rivers and then meditate. They just, they get absorbed in meditation. They just sit in one place for long periods of time, and they withdraw, they control their senses, and they withdraw the senses from the external world and look at the world within. They control the mind through controlled breathing. And gradually the mind is being focused by force, by mental strength on one point, and if the yogis actually correct yogis, it will be on the super soul, on the Krishna's expansion within their heart, and then they will force themselves to simply meditate on the super soul. And as they advance, at one point that meditation becomes natural. Instead of it being forced meditation, suddenly start becoming attracted to the super soul. And that's actually what samadhi is: full absorption with feeling of love and intense desire to obtain the super soul. That's actually samadhi. And I said, but how can that be practical? We cannot, how many of us can do it? But that's also what Arjuna will say. I cannot do that. Krishna will explain that yoga system in the 6th chapter. And Arjuna will say, impractical. Not possible. Sounds nice, but I cannot do it. Because, actually he says, because my mind is wild. my mind, he says, Chantalam himana Krishna pramati balavat ridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayo iva tuduskuram. He says, because the mind is turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, and to control it seems more difficult than controlling the wind. That's a mind. You recognize something? That's our minds. Minds are just wild, filled with, dragging us here, dragging us there, thinking of this, thinking of that, filling us with emotions and, elations and depressions, and, it's out of control. So that's Arjuna, and he's thinking like that, what to speak of, because, he's so qualified. Our situation is even more difficult than Arjuna's. He says, I cannot do that. And then Krishna says, yes, I agree with that. It's very difficult to control the minds. But actually, it is possible if you have the proper practice and being detached at the same time. I'll try to explain that. But Arjuna says, Krishna says, the proper practice. That means proper is depending on the individual. Some, a few yogis can go out in the mountains, they can practice this Ashtanga yoga process and achieve perfection, but very few can do that. But the proper practice, that means there has to be other systems for people of other mentalities, of other natures. And that's what Krishna said means proper practice. We're not all same nature, but that doesn't mean that us who are very, modern and very active and like that there's no proper practice for us. No, there's a proper practice for everyone, for all mentalities. That's the beauty of the Vedic process, of the yoga in the Vedic process. There's something for everyone. So that is, and that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. The proper practice for you is not to give up your duty as a fighter and your involvement in this horrible battle of Kurukshetra that's going to take place, but you should instead act for me the way I want you to act in this battlefield. Instead of fighting for yourself, you fight for me, and your fighting becomes devotional service, and being absorbed in devotional service, that will bring you to samadhi. That's actually Krishna's point here. In samadhi, the mind has to be fixed on one point. How is that possible when we are in the practical world and we wake up in the morning and we have a whole list, we have a whole to-do list, and I have to do this and meet this person and phone here, and and there's so many things we have to do. So how can that be one? That's many. There's so many things I have to do. So, but the point is, there's one thing. It's all done for Krishna's satisfaction. So in all situations where one is, if one has that, I'm simply doing this. Whatever I'm doing right now is for Krishna's satisfaction, and in a half an hour from now, it's a different activity, but that's done for Krishna's satisfaction. I'm trying to do this thing for Krishna's satisfaction, and then 2 hours from now, it's a different appointment, and so on, and then it's a different activity, same meditation. How can I do this for Krishna's satisfaction? This is actually samadhi, because constantly there's only one object of meditation. How can I act for Krishna's satisfaction in this moment, in this activity that I'm doing right now? That's actually, in one sense, simply put, this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna to act on a proper guidance. But this is actually, in one sense, the whole secret of the Bhagavad Gita. Simply act for Krishna's satisfaction all the time in whatever one does. But it has to be done, Krishna says, it has to be done with detachment. So what does detachment mean? Well, that's what this verse says. Or it actually says, it's not possible for those who are attached. And attached, what does that mean? That means Bog Aisvarya. One is attached to sense enjoyment and material wealth. When we have these attachments, then it's not possible to have this absorption, samadhi absorption. One is acting for the Supreme in all circumstances. So one has to work on that. We have to learn how to be detached. And we see that again if you can take the example of the yogis. They're obviously detached because these prototype yogis, they give up everything. Like Maharaj Bharata is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was a typical yogi. He was a king. He was he was a king of the world. Nowadays India is, traditionally known as Bharatavarsha. Before, that's actually the real name. And not only what today is known as India, actually the whole planet was known as Bharatavarsha. And that name goes actually back to Bharata Maharaj. So actually he was powerful, he was a great king on this planet, he was the emperor of this planet. But in a fairly young age, he gave up his emperorship, he handed over to his eldest son. That's actually how politicians should act, that's this instruction in the Vedas. Now we just had, I don't know how much you're involved in that, we just had an election here. So you can say something about politics. Politicians, they must give up their political post when they're 50 and then engage in spiritual activity and leave, the younger take over. So Maharaj Bharata, like that, he gave it all up and he went and he practiced meditation in the forest. And it's described how he left his kingdom. The king means power, he had wealth, and he was very popular, and he of course had a very nice family, beautiful queen, and so on. How did he leave it? Well, the Bhagavatam is actually very, very direct here. He says he left it like when you go out of the toilet and close the door. That's how he left everything. So he was. That was how detached he was from all the material wealth. And then he was engaged in meditation like that. And that's the standard yogis. They obviously had to be detached, otherwise they could not leave all their material possessions just like that. But it's not only the standard yogis, or what we normally associate with yogi, but actually any kind of spiritual practice, the same detachment has to be there. You have to be completely detached from all whatever enjoyment there is for ourselves, whatever material opulence we have. But it also has to be practiced properly. And the detachment that is actually being really advised, the yogi's detachment is they're just leaving everything, and like that. That's only for very few people. Most cannot do it. Most of us are not actually meant to be detached in that external way, but still we're meant to be detached. And that is described by Rupa Goswami. And, Rupa Goswami was one in our line, spiritual master. He lived in the 1500s. So he was actually in more detail describing what detachment actually is, real detachment. He was also discussing what false detachment is. But he was saying that real detachment, as the way he described it, is actually a very practical thing. Whereas the false renunciation is not practical, it's not doable, it sounds nice, but it's not possible to practice it. And actually the false renunciation will not lead us to to any perfection. But the real detachment will lead us to perfection. So the real detachment is that actually for my own self, I'm not attached to anything, whether I'm rich or poor, or young or old, healthy, unhealthy, man, woman, famous, anonymous, whatever. I'm not attached to any of these things. But whatever can be used for Krishna's satisfaction, I use simply for satisfying Krishna. And that is actually proper detachment. One doesn't. In that case, one is in the middle of the world. One sees that everything in the world belongs to Krishna. I also belong to Krishna, and I'm Krishna's servant. I'm in this particular situation with whatever is given in this situation. I'm meant to engage in serving in that situation. I'm not attached to it. As you know, when I'm here, as long as I'm here, I'll do my best. And one day, Krishna decides he'll take me away. He'll change the situation, or he'll remove me from the situation, or I might die, or something may happen. Okay, then now he's sending me somewhere else. I'm simply Krishna's servant. That's really detachment. We had a great example of that in Bhaktivinoda Thakur, another of our spiritual masters. He lived in the end of the 1800s. It was actually, we had a program from him on Tuesday because it was his disappearance day. He died or passed away in 1914. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was an unusual spiritual person. I mean, he was exceptional as a spiritual person, but also he was not like the prototype of guru that one normally thinks of. He was actually a very high position government officer in the English administration of those days. He was a magistrate in Bengal, and they say he was the highest positioned non-Britisher in the British administration. And he was actually so highly positioned that the English government built a railway for him only, so he could get a job every day, get to work every day. That's how influential he was. And so he was a magistrate, that means kind of a Supreme Court judge, and also it was a kind of both a High Court judge, and also he was the chief of the police. So these two positions were kind of combined in those days. So he was an extremely influential person. He had a family. He had actually 14 children. He had his first wife was 2 children, and she died, and he married again, and then he had 12 more children. Big family. And we also we looked at his daily schedule on Tuesday, how he was living, and actually he was just sleeping 3 hours a day. From 8 to 10 in the evening he would sleep, and then he would get up, and then he would start writing, not about government business, no, spiritual books, Krishna conscious books. And he wrote about 100 books. So he would write for like 5 hours every night, just write.